Hey, welcome to episode 64 of Fresh Air at 5. This week, you're going to hear me think and talk about some things that made me cause me to pause. That's what I'm meaning to say about a bunch of things, So, starting off the week, I listened to a conversation with the authors of The Minimalistic Teacher and how we need to slow down and prioritize so that we can get it done. And working through the week, how we, create content, why we should create content, we should share what we do so that others can gain from that. Moving along to longevity conversation as I listen to the Rich Roll, and finally today with Ken Williams. So the last segment, Ken Williams, gets you to think and go deep. So take a listen to my thoughts and my reflections, and possibly for you to listen to some of these podcasts. All right. Subscribe, tell a friend, write a review on Apple Podcasts, because that would help me get my message out further, or wherever you're listening to my podcast. I appreciate you. And without further ado, episode 64 of Fresh Air at 5. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Chris Nessie from the House of EdTech Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood, to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive, or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey, PLN, it is Saturday, March 12, 2022. Spring break has begun for me, and we are enjoying the snow. We are up at the Coquihalla Summit, and right across behind me, up that way, straight behind me is Needle Peak, where we went last weekend. And this time we are going across the north side of the road, the valley, to Zupjok. My wife and I did this back about a month ago. I think it was about that. And I went to Ottermite, which is just up this way. And today we're going to cut and go up that way to Zupjok. So yes, it's a beautiful day. We looked at the thermometer a moment ago. It was plus 8 degrees Celsius. So that means that it's pretty warm out. Wearing just a t-shirt and a long shirt over top of that. And yeah, it's not cold here at all. No gloves. The snow is a bit sticky, but you know what? I'm not going to complain at all. This is a beautiful, beautiful place that we're in, and enjoying the very first day of spring break. So happy spring break to all you that are starting spring break right now, and the rest of you, hopefully in a week or so, you'll start spring break. And that's all. Okay, talk to you later. Have a great day, and I'll post a video when this is done. Maybe tag it onto the bottom of this tweet so you can see it. All right, happy day. Bye-bye. Hey, PLN, Monday, March 14, 2022, out for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and it is early and it is fresh. It's on the verge of raining. We're expecting a rainfall warning here, so I'm thankful it's not raining right now. All right, this morning as I'm up and out and at it, it's the beginning of my spring break, the first Monday of spring break. We got 2 weeks off here, and I'm excited about just not having to work and do as many things and just able to slow down in my day. Well, you're like, Carpenter, you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, I am, because this is a priority to me. And this is important to me, And I'm excited because I can not have to go to work after I'm done here, but I can go home and I can do some other things and some chores, tie some flies, and just enjoy my cup of coffee without needing to go to work. All right, so this morning as I am walking, I listened to the Wired Educator podcast with Kelly Croy, episode 220, and he had on guests Tammy Murskowski Borneman and Christine Arnold. And they are the authors of a book called The Minimalist Teacher, and it's about prioritizing so that we can declutter our teaching space and focus on the priorities instead of all the fluff that gets in the way sometimes. Yes, the fluff is important too to some people, but otherwise, how do we do that? And so their book, this is the review, and they talked about it. How can we, understand our priorities and our purpose and to, put them in order so that, we can make good strides and we can be well and healthy and feel joy in the process of being educators in this highly demanding time. So thank you, Tammy and Christine, for sharing your work with Kelly. And Kelly, thanks for interviewing them. It's fantastic to hear. Take a listen to this and maybe get a copy of this for yourself. We'll see how it goes for me. I'm not a big reader, but we'll see how it goes. Appreciate you. Have a fabulous Monday. Talk to you soon. Bye. One more thing for March 14, 2022. I just turned on the House of Ed Tech and heard a couple things that were discouraging and hard to hear. Well, hard to hear. They're not hard to hear. They're important to hear. And our response to those is, I think, important as we move forward here in our education system. The first was, Chris, as you talked about my choice, and was about you having an interview for an admin position in a neighboring district and then getting pushed aside because you weren't one of the internal candidates. And how can we as external candidates for positions have anything to do if they are going to go, well, they had a deep inner working of the district. Some ways I feel a bit like that, Chris, and I feel some of that, and I felt that I've been kind of pushed aside. But you know what? I am where I am, and I'm glad to be where I am. I'm glad to be at my school making a difference in the students' lives that I get to make a difference in. And I think it's important that we apply for jobs because we don't know when we won't be the token external candidate and they are gunning for an internal candidate. So because we don't know, if we don't apply, we may not get it when they're looking for someone fresh and someone new from outside the fold. So that's my advice. It's hard to do. It's hard to take. And we don't have a choice when we don't get, past round one into round two, or, we don't even get to round one because our resume doesn't get picked up. But it's important that we, stay focused and consider whether this is something that we really want to do. And I'm in that position right now of trying to go, do I continue to apply for admin positions, or do I stay where I am until maybe someone comes knocking on my door? Maybe they won't knock because they expect me to apply and take initiative. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, right? So that's my thoughts about that. And we're out of time. One last thing for March 14, 2022. I'm listening to Chris Nesi as he was on the House of Ed Tech episode 197. My last segment got long as I was talking about my choice and about interviewing for positions. And so take a listen to that. And I kind of rant a little bit. So Chris, I feel your pain. Next segment, he talked about the situation with, Vice Principal Toby Price in Mississippi and how he was fired. And you read us part of the article that was in the New York Times from March 2nd about him reading a book to his students at the school over Zoom called I Need a New Butt. And, now I'm curious. I got to go get this book and take a read of this book because, if it's inappropriate that we talk about these things in our classrooms, then I think there's a problem with our education system. And, we are broad-stroking education system here, but with Toby Price's specific district and how he has a job that he needs to have and is passionate about making a difference and took the initiative to step in for another administrator who had dropped the ball and forgotten that they had to do this read aloud. He took the initiative and then he gets fired for reading this book. Take a listen to Chris Nessie's commentary on that on House of EdTech episode 197. Wow, Chris, let me know when this, I want to hear when I Need a New Butt Day goes on, and I will read that to my students, and we're going to collectively all read that when that happens. Wow, it's unfortunate. So yes, take a listen to what Chris has to say, and fighting for you, Toby Price, and thinking about you, and warm thoughts as you fight this cause and don't work in that district anymore. That's what I say, because there's a problem there with leadership. Kids need you, but there's a problem with leadership. All right, talk to you guys. Have a fabulous Monday. I will. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, March 15, 2022. Welcome to the middle of March. Those of you that are spooling up to go to Spring Q, so good. So jealous. Just didn't work out this year for me to be there. So hopefully, travel restrictions and such will make it that I can be there next year. Would really love to do that, to be able to connect with so many of you that listen and support, things that are going on in our education system, and also listen to me talk every day. Be glad to meet you and see you there and just to collaborate. All right, so as I'm walking, it is pouring rain. I left the house and it was just like drizzling a little. I'm like, oh, maybe it'll be okay. Well, no, it wasn't. I got soaked. And so I got soaked and I listened to We Got Tech, episode 107, where Eric and Nick bring on the gold as they bring on 10 eye-popping apps to check out and tools to check out for teachers. And, gents, I haven't heard of most of these, and now I have. So now I have an obligation to actually check them out. So like Nick said, it's time to sit down and do some homework. So I'm super excited about that. Things like ScreenPal, GoBoard, Gather, Melon, Color Cinch are just to name 4 or 5 of them that they talked about these 10. And there's so many applications for these things. The National Geographic Map Maker that has layers that you can build and put on top of each other and then annotate on the map. That looks super cool. All right, so that's about it. That's my thoughts for this afternoon. I hope everybody's doing good. I'm doing good. Spring break here, and I slept in this morning. So that's why I'm out this afternoon, and I got really wet. It's probably my punishment. Or maybe it's just raining. I think it was raining this morning too. All right, talk to you guys. Have a fabulous rest of your Tuesday. Bye. Hey, PLN, it's Wednesday, March 16, 2022. Out for FreshAirAtFive right now. And as I'm walking along, I'm headphones in, head down, walking along the street, and I get jumped by a dog. No, seriously, this dog came up behind me, and it's my friend Bruce's dog. And I run into Bruce and Sophie the dog almost every morning I'm out walking. And he's a neighbor that walks his dog at the same time because he gets his son up to get out the door to go to work as well. And we've connected over the past few months, and it's been really cool to just run into him on a regular basis and say good morning while I'm out here for FreshAirAtFive. Okay, there's another motivation reason why I get up to get out the door and go for my morning walk is because I might run into Bruce and Sophie, and it's so fun to do that. So this is a shout out to my friend Bruce, who he said, I'm going to take a listen to your podcast. So maybe he's listening to this, maybe not. We'll see. All right, we'll talk on that note of connections and times you cross paths with people. I crossed paths with this guy yesterday, and we went for coffee, and we talked about teaching and education and just life even, and just it's great to have a friend in a space that you're in, so that you can talk to somebody about things. And that's Tim Stevenson, and Tim and I met for coffee yesterday. I slept in on him, missed my wake up alarm, and I was late, but yeah, it was great. We sat at Starbucks, connected, and talked about what's going on. The word innovate, and how does the word innovate impact what you do? School districts have that in their tagline, that we innovate. And what does that mean in your school district? What's the evidence of that? What's the evidence of that in your space? Well, in Tim's space, I see his YouTube channel, and okay, I'm running out of time. Hang on one second. One more thing for March 16, 2022. Okay, I was rambling on there about innovate in the last segment. So if you didn't hear that, go and find the opening segment for today's daily. But I was talking about Tim Stevenson and our coffee we had yesterday, and the word innovate, and how we see evidence of innovation in our classroom space. I like what Kelly Croy says on his website, that innovate tends to be positioned into technology use. How do we use technology? And it's not so much that. Innovate has to do with everything that we do. It's about being creative. It's about taking what is and pushing it a little further down the line into something that has not been created yet, and making something new. So that's what I've seen on Kelly Crow's website. I was a guest on his podcast recently, and that's coming out this coming week. Okay, so then about Kelly and I, this is about Tim and what Tim's doing. So Tim, on Science 360, episode 51 that I just listened to this morning, the big question is why I create content and why you should too. And Tim, it's so very true. I like your podcast. Thanks so much for the shout out. That makes me feel good. It helps to talk about your podcast when I hear my own name in a podcast, but that's actually far from the reason why I'm talking about this. I see Tim Stevenson as an innovator in his space. I see him as, he's got his YouTube channel that he's talking about called Beyond the Sky, where he's putting up resources for teachers to be more comfortable talking about space, and how, I, a non-astronomy guy, could learn about it sufficient enough that I could talk about it in my science classroom. So much fun. So go subscribe to Beyond the Sky on YouTube, not just to get the clicks for Tim, but so that you can learn about space. Meet Tim, hanging out and listening to him as he, records his videos and his podcasts. This is who Tim is. I like Tim. And Tim, thanks so much for what you're doing. Keep rocking it, bro. Okay, we'll talk to you guys soon. I got more to learn. Okay, bye. One more thing for March 16, 2022. Okay, checking in Southern Alberta on Prairie Rose Possibilities, episode 2.06 with Cami Cannikins. And Cami, so great to hear the stories coming out of Prairie Rose Possibilities. People, take a listen as she's using podcasting as a way to document and share the work that's going on in projects in their district. And they have some funds that have been provided to schools to do projects, which is pretty cool. Okay, so on this episode, coming out of Senator Gershaw High School from the little community called Bow Island, and I have a friend from university that I hung out in university with named Shane Hansen, and so that's how Bow Island showed up on my map, because my friend was from there. And in that high school, Corey Shebelbein, I have said your name incorrectly, I'm sorry, Corey. He is the teacher of the Farms and Greenhouse course that is there, and they have a greenhouse that is producing food. Super cool. The kids are involved in growing food, and that's something that they're very proud of, because he says that they market it to the school, and the school community, students and staff, they purchase the food because it's good food. And so how they are doing that, how the students are learning about marketing and documenting and science and this whole whole project about how, food is grown and their surprises. We heard from two students, Chance and another student. I can't remember his name, but he really likes cucumbers, the second one. And he's fired up about the greenhouse program because he gets to eat free food from stuff that they grow. And he's learning about fertilizer and how much nutrients has to go into the water so that things can grow. It's not just water. So yeah, Cami, fantastic. And thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. Take a listen to Prairie Roast Possibilities. Subscribe because you'll be inspired to go to your classroom and do likewise. One more thing for March 16, 2022. I just listened to Amber Harper on the Burned In Teacher podcast on episode 107. Okay, I don't know. I'll put it in. I'll put it in the tweet so it'll be correct. It'll be in the show notes for the podcast when you guys want to go check that out. Okay, getting it right. It was the Burned In Teacher podcast, episode 129. Amber, thank you so much for sharing with us your practices of dealing with disrespectful, distracting, and other behaviors in your kindergarten class. And as a high school teacher, I think it might be too late for me in the year to start with these kinds of routines. Actually, a lot of these things are, helpful and good ideas, but difficult to put in place, I think, with big kids as opposed to the very young ones that are kindergarten age. But regardless, Amber, thank you so much. You shed some light on some things about, just education in general, about how we overwhelm our students sometimes with new and novel all the time. It's got to be exciting. It's got to be, it's got to be new. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be regular. It can be routine because, even as adult learners, we like regular and routine. How I learn on my podcast walks and Fresh Air at 5 is so important because it's regular, it's my routine, and I can put new things into my brain while I'm doing something regular and routine. And so having those constructs in place is important. I'm going to share this with our K-2 teacher at my school, and her name's Chantel. Big shout out to Chantel right now. And so she's doing amazing things, and she doesn't have things to fix, but I'm like, hey, if we can learn stuff from each other, we can make things even better. I'm also going to share this with our elementary team as well, because there's so many great things that you said, Amber. So yes, all right, that's all for now. Bye. One last thing for March 16, 2022. Rounding out Fresh Air at 5 this morning. It's been a beautiful morning. The clouds are high. Air is crisp, 5 degrees Celsius. And it's not raining like it was yesterday. So I'm thankful for that. And getting some fresh air, getting some, energy flowing through my body. And I'm looking forward to my warm cup of coffee when I get home and I do some editing for my podcast and taking all of this content and getting it ready to deploy on Friday at midnight on Fresh Air 5, episode 64. Okay, so as I'm walking along and wrapping this up, I listened to episode 220 of Teachers on Fire. Congratulations, Tim, on 220. That's a lot of episodes. That's a lot of content you've created over these years. And I'm proud to call you my friend. And I encourage people to take a listen to Teachers on Fire because Tim has some great stuff going on. Saturday mornings, roundtables are going on, so check him out on YouTube at 8 a.m. Pacific. Okay, there's my unpaid endorsement of my pal, so go check him out. All right, as I listen to episode 220, it's called When a Middle School Student Goes on Strike. Caught my attention, Tim. My goodness, and what an administrative challenge. And I appreciate you sharing the process that you walk through with your principal and the teacher and the student to come to the other side of a student strike from not participating in class, and that the student wasn't out of class but needed to remain in class. So you talk about the agenda, the mediation agenda, and that word mediation brings chills to our spine for us adults that have heard that word in professional settings. But you know what? It's good practice. good practice to keep the communication going. And I appreciate you sharing the process that you walk through with your student, the teacher, and admin, and to come to the other side of that. Take a listen, people. Be encouraged. Share this with an administrator. Hey, PLN, it is Thursday, March 17th, 2022. That is happy St. Patrick's Day. So the little bit of Irish in this guy is saying happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Have you done anything green today? Eaten anything green today? Caesar salad will be on the menu for this evening. And hey, look, there's a green box over there. All right, so that's enough about green. And today I did not walk this morning. Jen Giffen, you're probably going, oh, there's Carpenter again. He's in his garage. But she was thrown off the last time I did this, so I just thought I'd give a shout out to Jen Giffen of Shooks and Giff, and so shout out to Jen Giffen. Okay, today I did not walk because it was the day that I was going ocean fishing out of Vancouver with a couple of colleagues, my principal, and another teacher at my school. And so we went out ocean fishing with his friend who's a guide, and got to go float around on the ocean at Horseshoe Bay where the ferry terminal is, and out in that area looking for Chinook salmon. We were unfortunately skunked with the Chinook salmon. We actually had 5 or 6 hookups and one to the boat, but it wasn't legal, so we had to put it back. So we did that, brought some crab home. Super good, so super exciting. Okay. I listened to a new to me, hashtag new to me podcast, and it is the Rich Roll podcast that I had recommended to me by Tim Stevenson. So shout out to Tim Stevenson. And this is about, this episode 667 of the Rich Roll podcast talks about extending your life with Peter Diamandis. And he is a thought leader and a really smart guy. And I listened to this episode in and out of Vancouver today, and it was thought-provoking. It gets you thinking about longevity, about stem cells, about all kinds of stuff that is actually, frankly, above my head, except for one area where he was talking about the use of artificial intelligence, and another area, so our AI's above my head, but talked about education and about how we need to educate our kids and change the way education is happening. All right, that's it. There's my recommendation. Take a listen if you'd like. It is the Rich Roll, episode 667. Peace. Have a good day. Bye. One more thing for March 17, 2022. Okay, I didn't think I was going to get out for a walk because I had forgotten that I had to deliver papers this afternoon. So out I go before I settle into the couch for the evening. So got out for my afternoon walk, and so here we are. And I listened to the Ignite EdTech podcast, episode 84, as Craig Kemp had on guest Tanya Latancia, and she is talking about innovation in the way we do pedagogy in schools so that we are thinking about how we're meeting our students' needs. This kind of ties back into what I heard on the Rich Roll as Peter Diamandis was talking about, individual education and how we can meet our students' needs. Okay, so that's just a connection to the last segment. Go back and listen to that. And also on the Ignite EdTech podcast, Craig brings forward at the very beginning the classroomq.com as a way of being able to collate and collect and curate student questions in a classroom once they're set into work time. So this is something I think I'm going to try. I've heard about it before, and I think I'm going to try it and consider using it in my EdTech, my design media classroom, so that I can hear from all the students and attend to all their questions without missing anything. But I like the pause that it causes for students to think about how to ask a question so that they can get an effective answer. So that's Classroom Q. And then Craig asked the question about digital portfolios for adult learners and how do we keep our credentials and things safe in a place so that we have something to show to future employers in the future, whether we're doing that or not. But how do we curate that stuff? For myself, I use my professional learning with podcasting, I store it all within Anchor FM as I record my podcast and in my show notes. So that's a place that I do it. But the whole blockchain, got to look into that. Thanks. Peace. Bye. Hey PLN, it's Friday, March 18, 2022. This is the end of the first week of spring break. The name of episode 64 of Fresh Air at 5. It's coming out at midnight tonight. So take a listen to that. And I put some reflections in here about a number of things. And today I listened to the Tom Schimmer show. And I don't know the episode number, but it was the one that came out this past Monday morning, and it was talking about reflecting on research. Nope, not that. Something about research at the very beginning of it. And then he had on guest Ken Williams. And this morning as I've been walking, I've been struck by these two segments. The Don't At Me segment, as he talks about research and our response to things in media, and how we respond to educational research, and we respond to COVID research, and how we're following the science until we disagree with the science, and how we need to be more objective about how we look at research so that we're actually doing a good job of saying we follow the research, or we agree with the research or something about the research, and we don't dismiss the research. Research is what it is, and it gives us an answer to something in a context. And as a scientist, the research is critically important. We might not like the results of that chemistry lab, but the chemistry doesn't care because it is the results that we got, and we have to take and apply those in a certain context so that we can possibly get similar results or not. And if it's not, then it must be a very, very specific case that we're looking at. All right, so that's about the research and about the segment with Ken Williams. I was struck and impacted, and it got me to really pause and think about, what do I do as I walk into my classroom and try to teach with equity? Do I project trauma on students as they come to school during these days of the pandemic, during these days of COVID, during these days of, the Ukraine invasion, as Russia's invaded Ukraine, all those things, and how do I deal with that? Okay, I got to come back. I got more to say. One more thing for March 18, 2022, still reflecting on the listen that I did on the Tom Schimmer show as he talks with Ken Williams. And, the whole thing about equity and about equity in education, and what do we do about that, and how do we hold the crown high to grow the kids into the crown? Listen to that. That is powerful. Ken, you has some absolutely gold to share. And how do I go about applying that in my space and with an equity lens? Do I stop and pause and take care of, by projecting trauma and then helping kids through that trauma? Or do we have them learn? Do we expect learning in our classrooms, or are we there to push aside learning and then complain that they didn't have enough time to learn because we were dealing with all this SE stuff instead of the SE and L? I think it should be called SEAL instead of SEL, because we should be doing social, emotional, and learning parts of this so that we're not forgetting the learning. Learning's primary. How can we do social and emotional while we engage kids in learning? How do we, help them deal with their, social context, in light of learning the content that we're supposed to be teaching them? And then we complain that they just didn't have time to get it. All right. This was thought-provoking today. This was, yes, I really appreciate the challenge, Ken and Tom, as you brought this today. I really appreciate that. Thank you so very much. I didn't get to the assessment corner section, so sorry, Tom, missed that today. But I have some things to think about as I go into next week, my second week of spring break, and about equity and how do I treat kids compared to making them feel badly. So that's something that all of us educators should do. Take a listen to this episode. I challenge you to do so. All right. Peace out. Have a good one. And we'll see you next week. Episode 65 coming up next week of Fresh Air at 5. Bye. My one word for 2021 is appreciate. I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.